What happens when one of Hollywood's most unpredictable actors sits down with a talk show host who thinks he can mock anyone without consequences? Tonight, we're diving into the explosive confrontation that ended with Nicolas Cage storming off. Jimmy Kimmel live, but not before delivering some harsh truths that left Kimmel speechless and the audience stunned. This isn't your typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This is a masterclass in how ego and disrespect can backfire spectacularly. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because you won't believe how this unfolds. The tension was palpable. From the moment Nicolas Cage walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel live set, you could see it in his posture, the way he carried himself with that signature intensity that has defined his career for decades. Kimmel, sitting behind his desk with that familiar smirk, clearly had no idea what he was about to unleash. "Ladies and gentlemen, Nicolas Cage," Kimmel announced with his usual theatrical flair. But there was something different in Cage's demeanor as he settled into the guest chair. The audience applauded, but Cage's acknowledgement was brief, almost perfunctory. "Nicolas, great to have you back on the show," Kimmel began, leaning back in his chair with that casual confidence that has become his trademark. "I have to ask, and I know everyone's thinking it, what's with all the crazy movie choices lately? I mean, some of these films you're in, they're so bizarre that people are starting to wonder if you're just taking roles for the paycheck." The question hit like a slap. You could see Cage's jaw tighten slightly, but his response was measured. "Jimmy, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what drives an actor to choose certain projects. Every role I take has purpose, has meaning, even if that meaning isn't immediately apparent to everyone." But Kimmel wasn't done. He had that look in his eyes, the one that suggested he thought he was about to land a comedic knockout punch. "Come on, Nicolas, you can't seriously tell me that starring in a movie about a janitor who fights animatronic characters was about artistic integrity. That's just weird, man." The reference was to Cage's role in Willy's Wonderland, and you could see the actor's patience beginning to wear thin. "Weird?" Cage repeated, his voice taking on that distinctive cadence that fans know well. "Jimmy, what's weird is reducing an actor's entire body of work to punchlines for your monologue. What's weird is inviting someone onto your show just to mock their career choices in front of millions of people." The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going according to Kimmel's usual script. Normally, guests would laugh along with the ribbing, maybe make a self-deprecating joke. But Cage wasn't playing that game. Hey, it's all in good fun," Kimmel said, raising his hands in mock surrender. But his tone carried an edge. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Your fans love you, but they also love making memes about you. You've become this internet sensation because of how, well, intense you are in everything." "Intense?" Cage nodded slowly. "Yes, Jimmy, I am intense. I'm intense about my craft. I'm intense about bringing authenticity to every character I portray. What I find interesting is that intensity seems to make some people uncomfortable, especially people who coast on mediocrity and call it entertainment." The barb was subtle, but unmistakable. Kimmel's smile faltered for just a moment before he tried to regain control. "Mediocrity? Wow, okay. I mean, I've been doing this show for years. We've won awards, we have millions of viewers every night." "Awards for what exactly?" Cage leaned forward slightly. "For reading jokes that other people write? For creating viral moments by embarrassing your guests? Jimmy, you want to talk about weird career choices? Let's talk about a grown man whose primary job is making fun of other people's work, while contributing nothing original to the world." The studio fell silent. This was uncharted territory. Kimmel's face flushed slightly as he realized his usual tactics weren't working. In fact, they were backfiring spectacularly. "I think you're being a little unfair," Kimmel tried to laugh it off. "I mean, comedy is subjective, and entertainment comes in many forms. Just because I'm not, screaming about bees or whatever, doesn't mean what I do isn't valid." The B reference was a low blow, a callback to one of Cage's most memed moments from The Wicker Man, and everyone in the studio knew it. Cage's expression darkened. "There it is," Cage said quietly, but his voice carried throughout the studio. "The cheap shot. The desperate reach for a laugh at someone else's expense. Jimmy, do you know what that scene was about? Do you understand? The context, the emotional journey that character was on? Or do you just see it as content for your highlight reel?" Kimmel was floundering now. "Look, Nicholas, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just, you have to admit, some of your performances are a little over the top." "Over the top according to whom?" Cage's voice was rising now, that famous intensity coming to the surface. "According to talk show hosts who wouldn't know genuine emotion if it slapped them in the face? According to an industry that's become so sanitized, so afraid of real feeling, that they mock anyone who dares to be vulnerable on screen?" The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. This wasn't just a celebrity spat. This was becoming something much deeper, a collision between two completely different philosophies of entertainment. "I think we should maybe change the subject," Kimmel suggested, clearly regretting his approach, but Cage wasn't finished. "No, Jimmy, let's not change the subject. Let's talk about what's really happening here. You invited me on your show not to have a conversation, not to explore ideas or connect with your audience in any meaningful way. You brought me here to be your punching bag, to give you material for tomorrow's monologue. Well, here's some material for you." Cage stood up from his chair, and you could feel the energy in the room shift completely. This was no longer a talk show interview. This had become something else entirely, something raw and unpredictable that had everyone on the edge of their seats. Cage stood there, towering over Kimmel's desk, his presence filling the entire studio. The silence was deafening, broken only by the subtle hum of cameras still rolling, capturing every second of this unprecedented moment. "You want to know what's really weird, Jimmy?" Cage continued, his voice now carrying that unmistakable theatrical power that has captivated audiences for decades. "What's weird is a society that celebrates mediocrity while tearing down anyone who dares to take risks. What's weird is a culture where being safe and boring is rewarded while being passionate and committed is ridiculed." Kimmel was visibly sweating. Now, his usual confidence completely shattered. "Nicholas, please, let's just sit down and talk about your new project. I'm sure our audience would love to hear about it." "Our audience?" Cage laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jimmy, these people didn't come here to watch you humiliate your guests. They came here hoping to connect with something real, something authentic. Instead, you give them manufactured controversy and recycled jokes." The camera captured Kimmel's face perfectly, his discomfort growing by the second. He looked toward his producers off stage, clearly hoping for some kind of intervention, but no one moved. This was television gold, and everyone knew it. "I think you're overreacting," Kimmel said weakly, attempting to regain some semblance of control. "It's just comedy, man. People expect a little back and forth, some playful banter." "Playful?" Cage's eyebrows shot up. "Jimmy, there's nothing playful about systematic mockery. There's nothing playful about inviting someone onto your show with the sole purpose of making them the butt of your jokes. That's not comedy. That's cruelty disguised as entertainment." The audience was completely transfixed. You could hear people shifting in their seats, phones being discreetly pulled out to capture this moment. This wasn't just good television. This was historic television. "Look, if I've offended you, I apologize," Kimmel said, but his tone suggested he was anything but sorry. "Maybe you're just not used to this kind of format. Most actors understand that late-night TV involves a little good-natured ribbing." That was the wrong thing to say, and everyone in the studio felt it immediately. Cage's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing as he processed what he'd just heard. "Not used to this format?" Cage repeated slowly. "Jimmy, I've been doing interviews longer than you've been on television. I've sat across from everyone from Charlie Rose to Oprah Winfrey, and somehow I managed to have meaningful conversations with all of them without being treated like a circus act. Those are different kinds of shows, Kimmel protested. This is late-night comedy. People tune in for laughs, not deep philosophical discussions. And there's the problem, Cage said, pointing directly at Kimmel. You've convinced yourself that comedy and depth are mutually exclusive. You think that making people laugh requires you to punch down, to diminish others for your own benefit. That's not comedy, Jimmy. That's just lazy. The studio audience was beginning to react now, not with laughter but with murmurs of agreement. Several people could be heard saying yes and exactly under their breath. The energy in the room was shifting, and Kimmel could feel it. I don't punch down, Kimmel said defensively. I make jokes about everyone, celebrities, politicians, myself. It's equal opportunity comedy. Equal opportunity? Cage's voice rose again. Jimmy, you make jokes about people's appearance, their personal struggles, their creative risks. How is that equal opportunity? When was the last time you risked anything? When was the last time you put yourself out there in a way that made you vulnerable to criticism? Kimmel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He was completely out of his depth, facing an opponent who wasn't playing by the usual celebrity interview rules. I'll tell you when, Cage continued, not waiting for an answer. Never. You hide behind your desk, behind your writers, behind your audience. You take shots at people who are actually creating something, who are actually putting their hearts and souls into their work, while you contribute nothing but snark and cynicism. That's not fair, Kimmel finally managed. I work hard on this show. We entertain millions of people every night. Entertain? Cage shook his head. Jimmy, entertainment should elevate people, inspire them, make them feel something real. What you do is give people permission to be cruel, to mock anyone who dares to be different or passionate or authentic. You're not entertaining them. You're enabling their worst impulses. The silence that followed was profound. Even the crew members visible in the background had stopped what they were doing to watch this confrontation unfold. This wasn't just a celebrity meltdown. This was a philosophical battle being fought in real time. I think maybe we should take a commercial break, Kimmel suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. No, Cage said firmly. No commercial breaks, no cuts, no editing. For once in your career, Jimmy, let something real happen on your show. Let your audience see what happens when someone refuses to play your game. Kimmel looked genuinely panicked now. This had spiraled completely beyond his control, and he had no idea how to regain it. His usual arsenal of quips and comebacks was useless against someone who was speaking from such a place of authentic passion. Nicholas, please, Kimmel pleaded. I really didn't mean any harm. Maybe I came on too strong with the jokes. Can we just start over? Start over? Cage laughed again, that same humorless sound. Jimmy, you can't start over from a foundation of disrespect. You can't build a genuine conversation on top of mockery and contempt. This is who you are, this is what you do, and pretending otherwise now doesn't change anything. The audience was completely silent now, but their attention was laser-focused on every word. Social media was probably exploding with clips and commentary, but inside the studio, there was only this moment, this raw confrontation between two very different approaches to public life. What do you want from me? Kimmel asked, and for the first time, his voice carried a note of genuine desperation. I want you to understand something, Cage said, his voice dropping to a more conversational tone, which somehow made his words even more powerful. Every person you make fun of, every performance you mock, every risk you ridicule, represents someone who was brave enough to try something. Someone who put themselves out there knowing they might fail, knowing they might be criticized, but believing that the attempt was worth it anyway. He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. And then there's you, sitting safely behind your desk, contributing nothing but negativity to the world while profiting from other people's courage. Do you see the problem with that, Jimmy? The question hung in the air like a challenge, and you could see Kimmel's mind racing, trying to find some way to salvage the situation. But Cage wasn't finished. He had more to say, and the audience could sense it. You know what the real tragedy is here, Jimmy? Cage continued, his voice now carrying a weight that seemed to fill every corner of the studio. It's not just that you mock creativity and passion, it's that you've convinced an entire generation that cynicism is sophistication, that tearing things down is somehow more valuable than building them up. Kimmel's face was flushed now, beads of sweat visible on his forehead under the studio lights. I'm not trying to tear anything down. I'm just trying to make people laugh. At whose expense? Cage shot back immediately. Every joke has a target, Jimmy. Every laugh you get comes from someone else's pain, someone else's embarrassment, someone else's vulnerability. Is that really the legacy you want to leave behind? The audience was completely captivated now. Several people in the front rows were nodding along with Cage's words, clearly moved by his passion and conviction. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. This was a moment of truth that was unfolding live on television. I don't think you understand how this business works, Kimmel said, his voice taking on a defensive edge. Comedy has always involved making fun of public figures. It's what comedians do. It's what audiences expect. Expect? Cage's voice rose again, that famous intensity reaching a crescendo. Jimmy, audiences don't expect cruelty. They've been conditioned to accept it because people like you have convinced them that it's normal. But it doesn't have to be this way. He turned slightly to address the audience directly, his voice becoming more intimate but no less powerful. You deserve better than this. You deserve entertainment that lifts you up, that makes you think, that connects you to something larger than yourselves. You don't have to settle for watching one person humiliate another for your amusement. The audience response was immediate and overwhelming. Applause erupted throughout the studio, not the polite, prompted applause of a typical talk show, but genuine, spontaneous appreciation for what they were hearing. Several people stood up, and soon nearly half the audience was on their feet, clapping for Cage's words. Kimmel looked around in disbelief. This was his show, his audience, and they were applauding his guests' criticism of him. The humiliation was complete and public. Okay, that's enough, Kimmel said, his voice suddenly harsh and commanding. This is my show, and I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by someone who thinks screaming about bees is high art. The callback to the meme was desperate and petty, and everyone in the studio felt it. The audience's applause died immediately, replaced by uncomfortable murmurs and a few audible gasps. Kimmel had just revealed his true colors, and they weren't pretty. Cage stood there for a moment, looking down at Kimmel with something that might have been pity. There it is again, he said quietly. When you can't win with intelligence or wit, you resort to cheap shots and personal attacks. Jimmy, you've just proven every point I've made tonight. Get out, Kimmel said suddenly, his voice cracking slightly. Seriously, I want you off my show. Security, the audience gasped collectively. In the history of late-night television, this was unprecedented. Hosts didn't kick guests off their shows, especially not in the middle of a live broadcast. But Kimmel had reached his breaking point, and his desperation was showing. Security? Cage laughed, but this time there was genuine amusement in it. Jimmy, you're going to have me physically removed because I told the truth? Because I held up a mirror, and you didn't like what you saw? Two security guards appeared from the wings, looking extremely uncomfortable with the situation. They approached slowly, clearly reluctant to actually remove one of Hollywood's most respected actors from a talk show stage. This is incredible, Cage said, addressing the audience again. Ladies and gentlemen, you're witnessing something remarkable here. A man so threatened by honest conversation, that he's willing to have his guest forcibly removed rather than engage with the ideas being presented. The audience was in complete shock. Phones were out everywhere now, capturing every second of this historic meltdown. This would be talked about for years, dissected and analyzed and remembered as the moment when the facade of polite celebrity culture completely crumbled. "Don't touch me," Cage said calmly to the security guards, who had stopped a few feet away, clearly unsure how to proceed. "I'll leave on my own. But before I go, I want to say something to everyone watching at home." He turned to face the main camera directly, his presence commanding even in this chaotic moment. "Don't let anyone convince you that passion is embarrassing, that caring deeply about something is weird, that taking risks is foolish. The world needs more people who are willing to put themselves out there, not fewer. Don't let the cynics win." With that, he turned and walked toward the exit, his head held high, leaving behind a studio full of stunned audience members and a host who looked like he'd just been hit by a truck. "We'll be right back," Kimmel said weakly to the cameras. But his voice was barely audible over the chaos in the studio. Audience members were standing, talking loudly among themselves, some still applauding, others just staring in disbelief at what they'd witnessed. As Cage reached the edge of the stage, he paused and turned back one final time. "Jimmy," he called out, his voice carrying clearly across the studio. "Next time you want to mock someone's work, maybe make sure you've actually created something worth defending first." And with that devastating final blow, Nicolas Cage walked off the Jimmy Kimmel live stage, leaving behind one of the most explosive moments in late-night television history. The audience erupted in a mixture of applause, shocked laughter, and amazed chatter, while Kimmel sat behind his desk, looking absolutely defeated. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in for everyone involved. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a cultural moment, a line drawn in the sand between two completely different philosophies of entertainment and human interaction. And there you have it, the complete story of how Nicolas Cage dismantled Jimmy Kimmel's entire approach to comedy and entertainment, live on television, with nothing but truth, passion, and an unwillingness to play the game. What did you think of Cage's performance? Was he right to call out Kimmel's tactics, or did he go too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that reveal what really happens when the cameras are rolling and the gloves come off.